Meeting of the Provo City School District Board of Education. It is 4:05 p.m. We're meeting at 280 West, 940 North in Provo. And we'll start with the roll call. I'm Rebecca Nielsen, Board President. Jennifer Parker, Melanie Hall, Board Member. Lisa Boyce, Board Member.
Gina Haley, Board Member.
Meg Van Wagenen, Board Member.
Terry McCabe, Board Member.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
And we have some guests. Well, we're going to excuse Superintendent Keith Rattel today, and we have some guests with us online. We have Kyrene and Emily from Y2 Analytics. Okay, we're ready, Kyrene. You can take over.
Fantastic. I will go ahead and dive right into the fun stuff here. So we are excited to share the results of this community survey that we received an excellent response to, both from residents in the community and from district staff. So with a quick overview of survey methodology first, we had a total of just shy of 1,600 responses in total, 997 of those coming from district staff and 602 responses coming from residents throughout the Provo City School District. You can see we've geocoded those responses into the Provo and Timpview High boundaries. There are a few areas where we'll call out some of the interesting differences that we saw between these two regions of the district. And overall, our resident population has been weighted to ensure that we are representative of the underlying population as a whole in regards to age, gender, and ethnicity. And 602 responses among our resident population results in a margin of error of about 4 percentage points around all of the estimates that we'll present in this report. We don't have a set of population statistics or margin of error for the district staff. It was relatively close to a census, though, based on the response we got there. So we're feeling really good about that. Starting off with a few key findings or highlights that I think are important pieces to keep in mind as we go through the survey results. So overall, we see relatively high levels of satisfaction with district performance, but we do have a lot of residents who indicate that they're unsure of whether the district is headed in the right direction and unsure of how the district is doing in regards to its sort of strategic goals and priorities as well. So there's definitely an opportunity for increased outreach, increased communication with the public. And that's something that sort of foreshadows what residents are looking for when we ask them what they would like to see in a new superintendent. When we ask what the priorities of the community are for the district generally, supporting teachers and ensuring that students are well prepared for the future, both academically and with life skills, are things that really reach the top of that list. So teacher and staff compensation is a high concern, an area of priority for the community and staff alike. And then student preparation sort of comes in neck and neck there. When we ask residents what types of qualities they're looking for in a superintendent, it really mirrors those things. And when we ask the staff, similarly, those priorities are mirrored. Support of teachers and then ensuring that students are successful are really the top priorities there. Prioritizing student achievement is one of the top priorities overall for all of these considerations. When we ask about specific qualities of a potential candidate for superintendent, the things that rise to the top of the list here are moral character, leadership skills, and effective communication. We'll get into a little bit of the contours here as to what are not just identified as important, but the most important overall. But again, those top 3 qualities are the things that come to light both in those open-ended responses and in those evaluations or rankings in the closed-ended question as well. There are some interesting differences that we see between community members and district staff, and we'll talk about some of those contours in a bit more detail also. And finally, when we ask what the high priorities of the community are in regards to how the superintendent interacts, district staff are really looking for support, again, from the superintendent, understanding And then community members are especially focused on transparency, ensuring that the superintendent is communicating with the district and that he or she acts as the community's voice with the school district and decisions that are made, especially budget decisions. And though there are, again, some geographic patterns that we'll look at in regards to those findings as well. And both residents and staff are interested in staying up to date with the hiring process. So as the district and the board are making decisions about a potential candidate for superintendent, the community is interested in being informed about that process, and teachers and staff especially are invested in updates on that hiring process. So starting at a high level, again, sort of the current assessment or evaluation of how the district is doing, both from a staff perspective and a resident perspective. You can see just shy of 2/3 of our staff members say that they feel the district is currently headed in the right direction. About 1/3 of our resident community responded similarly, but again, nearly half of our residents declined to express an opinion either way, indicated that they don't have enough information to indicate whether the district is headed in the right direction or wrong direction. So the thing that I like to look at here when I'm trying to interpret the numbers outside of those don't know responses, it's just the ratio of right direction responses to wrong direction responses. So among district staff, we have about 4 times as many right direction responses as wrong direction responses. It's a pretty good health indicator among district employees. And then for the resident population, we have just over twice as many, so a 2-to-1 ratio of right direction to wrong direction responses in the community. So we're still right side up, definitely a positive view overall, but again, certainly there's room to increase the information that the community has, and maybe some outreach and communication is needed there to help residents feel a little bit more informed or have a little bit more stake in the direction the district is headed. When we ask both residents and staff what they see as the most important issues facing the district, some of the things that sort of bubble up here in those open-ended responses from residents frequently hinge on rising costs, infrastructure, budgetary decisions, and then educational quality, how various aspects of curriculum or teacher ideology, teacher philosophies maybe are permeating the classroom or not, and whether those things are in line with the values of the community. When we look at the responses among district staff, the things that we really see are sort of focused on teacher support and some of the miscommunications or just lack of understanding between administrators and those who are in the classroom. So one staff member in particular highlighted a disconnect between top level management and classroom teachers. And then another staff theme that we saw was just a lack of sort of sense of direction or a lack of focus on academic growth and proficiency. So there are teachers, and again, we sort of pulled out some of the most thematic responses here. So there is a sense among district staff that there could be more focus on student achievement and ensuring that we're really promoting that academic growth. When we ask residents and staff members how they feel the district is doing in regards to accomplishing its vision, and this is after presenting them with a brief summary of the district's vision as sort of cited on the website and some other district materials that folks may or may not have been familiar with before. But so we presented that vision to them and asked them to evaluate the district's performance in regard to that vision, whether it was excellent, good, average, poor, or terrible. And again, offering a don't know option there. You can see in this regard, we had fewer residents declining to express an opinion, only 18% compared to the nearly half who said that they weren't sure about the direction that the district was heading. But overall, we have a really solid number of above average responses here. So a majority of district staff members gave the district an excellent or good rating in regards to achieving that vision or reaching those goals. About a third of residents, 35%, give an above average rating to the district. Another third give an average rating. Only 13% are giving a below average rating in regards to those key goals that the district has identified. Some of the things in regards to residents' responses to this performance evaluation, the things that sort of jumped out to us or stood out were that the district does a really great job. One of the excellent things, or one of the motives behind an excellent rating, is that the district does a great job creating a safe environment for students to explore and learn. Some of the comments about a good rating or why a resident may have given a good rating are focused on, again, sort of the opportunities that students have. So there's an incredible amount of CTE options and top quality instructors. And one resident mentioned, and again, we sort of saw this come out in some of those themes, compared to other school districts, the Provo City School District feels like more of a community. Residents really feel like they have a voice here, or those residents who are offering this positive evaluation. For those residents who are offering average evaluations, and staff members as well, pardon me, for those average evaluations, some of the themes we saw were involved or focused on parental involvement. One resident said that they would like to see more involvement with parents or more interaction with parents, less focus on unions. So definitely some slightly politicized responses here. One staff comment focused on classroom sizes and the overall just strain that growth and enrollment places on the classroom really comes to light in those sort of average responses there. Again, we had really small sample sizes in those below average ratings, but some of the things that came up in those responses are focused on just a lack of support for teachers or a lack of focus on teachers when the district administration is making decisions. And then again, some concerns about funding. One resident in particular mentioned that they feel the district only cares about getting more money for new school buildings. So following that performance evaluation question, we asked our respondents what their highest priority areas or of concern are regarding the district. And we asked them to choose just their top 3 choices in this particular question. You can see, again, teacher and staff compensation rises to the top of the list here, both among our residents and district staff. District staff feel a little bit more strongly about that. 2/3 of district staff members identify that as one of their top 3 concerns. Just shy of half of residents say the same. And then student preparation for success in society. Again, it goes beyond academic performance when we're talking about what residents and staff members are most concerned about. So again, pretty comparable rates here among residents and staff members in terms of the extent or the magnitude of that priority, 41% and 42% respectively. Class size, student safety, and then learning outcomes and student academic performance are statistically tied here for that 3rd place most important or top concern spot. And then I've called out a couple, or my team has called out a couple geographic trends here. So anytime we're looking at some of those differences between high school boundaries, you'll see those pop up in one of the shaded boxes on the right-hand side of the slide. So in this case, we found that residents in the Timpview high school boundaries are significantly more concerned about facilities and maintenance, maybe predictably so, given the events over the last few years. And residents in the Provo high school boundaries are more likely to express concern with student preparation for success in society. And then safety and teacher compensation are also higher level priorities among those Provo high school boundary residents than their Timpview counterparts. Safety is the one that really pops in terms of reordering of priorities there compared to the overall response rate. We also asked residents to rank the top valued metrics for success, or the things that they think are most important when identifying district performance or success for the Provo School District. The most frequently selected value overall for any of the top 3 rankings. So we really just look at the top 3 here. When we look at a list of this size, generally speaking, when we have the top 3 sort of, especially when there's this much of a gap or this much differential between that 3rd place priority and the 4th place priority, it's fair to say that we have a little bit of a washout on the lower end of this ranking list. So not as much variance between parental involvement, equity, transparency, and innovation. But again, those top 3 priorities, clearly the ones that rise to the top of the list, are student growth and development, both social, emotional, and academic, or social and emotional, excuse me, academic being our 3rd place priority ranking here. Although when we're looking at just those 1st place rankings, it actually ever so slightly outranks teacher support. Our total share of residents who identified student growth and development as one of their top 3 priorities was 78%. Among staff, that was 80%. We're looking at really similar, again, statistical ties there. But teacher support, again, maybe predictably, is a higher priority for district staff members in terms of the share of staff members who identified this as one of their top 3 priorities. And then student academic achievement is a slightly higher priority for the community as a whole, or those residents in the district. 70% identify that as one of their top 3 priorities compared to 64% of staff members. Parental involvement, also a larger constituency among the resident population, identify this as one of their top 3 priorities. So a little bit of trade-off there between support for teachers and involvement of parents, depending on which population they were representing. And then equity, teachers and staff members in the district are significantly more likely than the rest of the community to identify this as one of their top 3 priorities. Whereas transparency is much more frequently identified as a top 3 priority for residents throughout the district than for district staff members. Innovation is is a lower priority here, rarely identified as one of the top 3, again, compared to these other issue categories or, again, metrics for success. So looking at these metrics for success, we asked our respondents to evaluate the district's performance in each of these areas. Again, on that 5-point scale from excellent to terrible. And you can see for our student academic achievement score, we fall just shy of half of our respondents, indicating that the district or giving the district an above average rating there. 48% total offer an excellent or good rating, with 39% offering an average rating. Very few poor or terrible evaluations here. Similarly, innovation, though it isn't one of our respondents' top 3 priorities for metrics for success, it's certainly an area where our respondents identify the district doing quite well. 43% of residents offer an above average rating, and another 45% offer an average rating. So again, pretty positive marks there. In terms of equity, we have 42% of respondents giving an excellent or good rating, 41% of respondents give an above average rating for student growth and development, 38% of respondents give an above average response for parental involvement, 36% for transparency, and 31% for teacher support. It's also, I think, worth noting that teacher support and transparency are those areas. All of this is pretty directly or indirectly correlated. So sometimes we see areas where residents or district staff members may not offer an above average rating, but we really see that average category balloon. In this case, it is an almost perfectly linear relationship between an increase in above average ratings and a decrease in below average ratings, or vice versa, an increase in below average ratings and a decrease in above average ratings. So not a lot of fluctuation in that average response category. When we ask residents compared to district staff members, we do see, again, more residents indicating that they don't know how the district is performing in regards to each of these areas. Again, for ease of interpretation, we've filtered out those don't know responses here, just so that we can see, again, that linear relationship between those above average and below average responses. And when it comes to some of those geographic differences, again, student achievement, student growth and development, and parental involvement are all rated lower by those residents in the Provo High School boundaries compared to their Timpview counterparts. So those things that are identified as some of the top priorities in that hierarchy are rated slightly lower among Provo High School boundary residents. Our Timpview High School boundary residents are more likely to give below average ratings for transparency in particular. So again, some potential areas for improvement from the public perspective there. So shifting gears a little bit to focus specifically on our search criteria for a candidate for superintendent. When we ask our respondents what characteristics and attributes they feel are important, and then which among those are the most important to them. You can see we've sort of layered those numbers on top of each other here. So that dark orange bar indicates that a quality was selected as important in general. And then that light orange bar on the inside suggests that that was the most important quality overall. And you can see there's a lot of positive qualities here that both residents and staff members agree are important to them when thinking about a candidate for superintendent. Again, moral character, leadership skills, and effective communication really rise to the top of the list. Understanding the community is also a high priority for both of these audiences. A couple areas where we see notable differences between district residents and staff members are in regards to the role of parents. You can see that's significantly more important to our residents in the community. And then respecting different points of view, on the other hand, is significantly more important to district staff members. And having a collaborative attitude, so being collaborative, is significantly more important to district staff respondents to the survey as well. When we look at those qualities that are identified as the most important overall, there's a lot less decisiveness between our staff and resident responses. There aren't as many, I wouldn't say there's a clear winner here from our staff responses in particular. We're looking at statistical ties between moral character, leadership skills, and then understanding the community and respecting different points of view. And then sort of a statistical tie for what I would say is the third place there then would be effective communication and collaboration. When we look at those resident responses, it's a little bit clearer that moral character is the #1 most frequently identified, most important quality in a potential superintendent. But after that, again, statistical ties here. We're looking at a statistical tie between the importance of understanding the community, using evidence-based methods, respecting the role of parents, and leadership skills generally. So a lot of really important things to consider here, not a clear mandate in one direction, which I think is important to keep in mind when we're evaluating potential candidates. There are a lot of factors that are important to both the staff and the residents of the community. Again, a few differences between our Provo High School residents and our Timpview High School boundary residents. Those in the Provo High School boundaries are more focused on moral character as the most important attribute overall, followed by understanding the community and sharing their values, while those Timpview High School boundary residents are more likely to place emphasis on using evidence-based methods. So that one sort of jumps up again in that priority ranking compared to our Provo High School residents. We asked some questions about how the community and staff members would like to see the superintendent or the potential superintendent interact with teachers and staff in the district. And some of the things that are most important here, you can see there's not a lot of variance. All of these things are important to our respondents, with the exception of 1% of respondents indicating that broadly communicating the board mission, priorities, and goals was not at all important to them. That is a very small number overall. You can see most of these things are identified as at least somewhat important, with a few respondents here and there indicating that these are not very important issues to them. But in total, we have 99% of respondents who say that it's at least somewhat important that the superintendent makes sure that they're informed on the needs and issues facing teachers and staff in the district. 98% of respondents say that it's at least somewhat important that the superintendent has equal consideration and respect for all schools throughout the district. Again, 98% say that it's at least somewhat important that the superintendent works with teachers to determine educational direction and improve student success. So thinking about sort of the academic achievements and goals there. 98% again indicate that it's at least somewhat important that the superintendent accepts criticism and feedback from teachers and staff throughout the district. 97% say it's at least somewhat important that the superintendent establishes formal and informal channels of communication with the teachers. 95% say that it's at least somewhat important that the superintendent places student achievement as the top priority and is consistently communicating this to others. And this is where we really start to see a little bit of variance introduced that I think is especially interesting when we look at the difference between, again, those total important scores, which are quite high across the board. When we look at those very important ratings, we start to see some significant shifts here from those 80s down to our 55%, down to just shy of a majority, indicating that broadly communicating the board's mission, priorities, and goals is very important to them. But when we look at those aspects or descriptions of how the superintendent and staff interact, and ask respondents what is the most important aspect or characterization of those interactions. We see about a third of respondents indicating that the superintendent working with teachers to determine the educational direction is their most important priority overall. 20% say that the superintendent staying informed on the needs facing teachers and staff throughout the district is their most important priority. And 18% say that student achievement being the top priority and being communicated as the top priority is their most important priority overall. Again, I think some of the differences here when we ask our respondents, or we force our respondents to make a choice, rather than just presenting them with all of the options and asking them to indicate how important things are. This is where we really see some of that hierarchy develop and some of that variance come through. We asked respondents to tell us a little bit about, looking at comparisons between residents and our staff members here. So this is the aggregated responses between all of our both residents and district staff. Breaking those numbers out to look at some of the differences, you can see that student achievement being the top priority and consistently communicated as the top priority is slightly more common as the number one most important aspect of superintendent staff interactions among residents, whereas staying informed on the needs and issues facing teachers and staff is more frequently identified as the most important aspect of those interactions by district staff respondents. Otherwise, we see pretty comparable responses or evaluations of priorities across the board here. That number one highest priority still being working directly with the teachers to determine the educational direction and improved student success in the district. Again, some geographic differences among Provo High School and Timpview High School residents. Our Provo High School residents are more likely to say that the superintendent working with teachers to improve student success should be the top priority. That was expressed as the most important aspect of interactions by 44% of Provo High School boundary residents, compared to just over 30% among Timpview High School boundary residents. And then our Timpview High School boundary residents are more likely to say that it's important for the superintendent to be able to accept criticism and have equal consideration for all schools, those rates both being higher than those offered by Provo counterparts, or Provo High School counterparts, excuse me. We asked in an open-ended question among our staff respondents what our teachers and staff throughout the district would like to see in terms of how the district or how the superintendent interacts with them specifically. If there were any other qualities or characteristics of those interactions or communications that we may not have evaluated or asked them to evaluate in the prior question. Some of the themes that stood out here were just having a superintendent who is approachable, who listens, who communicates effectively, and who's willing to work directly with the teachers and staff throughout the district to ensure that we're collaborating to promote student success. So some of the things that we pulled out here, again, sort of thematic comments, being able to empathize and validate teacher experiences, it would be motivating for teachers if the superintendent collaborated with them. A superintendent who is respectful, supportive, understanding. It's important that the superintendent be an active listener. They need to interact with district employees differently than with teachers. So maybe some differentiation based on roles and responsibilities and some recognition of those different roles and responsibilities. And then some comments as well about understanding more about the decision-making process and having a little bit more of a view into the administration's goals and evaluations, both of their own performance and of teacher performance, sort of with, again, an eye towards transparency and collaboration. Looking at how the community and our district staff members want to stay involved or up to date about the superintendent search, you can see a majority of our district staff respondents indicate that it's very important to them that they can stay up to date on the hiring process and be informed about that final decision. 39% of our resident respondents, though, indicate that it's very important to them as well. So despite a relatively large share of residents who indicate that they don't have a lot of information about the district right now in terms of its performance in various strategic aspects or just the general direction the district is heading, it's worth noting that residents are very interested in being kept up to date in this process and understanding the criteria that are used for the ultimate selection of a new superintendent. Email was identified as the most popular way to receive this type of update or information, followed by the district website and then general district newsletters. About a third of our respondents, both among the district staff and our community residents, say that they would like to receive updates through social media posts as well. So there are a lot of virtual channels here that can be leveraged to ensure that both the community and our district staff and employees are well informed about the process. School board meetings are a significantly less frequently utilized or less preferred mode of communication for these updates. Text messages sort of hits the bottom of the list here. I think probably like most of us, there are so many text messages coming through the filter these days that it's difficult to prioritize that type of communication for updates that you might want to devote a little bit more time and attention to. So emails, district website, the district newsletter are all sources that are sort of there and available for community members to digest at their leisure and maybe in a little bit more depth than can be afforded through a text message, for example. We also asked respondents to tell us a little bit if there were additional qualities that, again, we hadn't examined in previous questions that they would like to see in a superintendent. So when thinking about how the superintendent interacts with the community, in what ways would they like to see those interactions play out? Or are there specific qualities or attributes that, again, we haven't examined yet that they would like to see. You can see we've, again, pulled out some of the thematic responses here, but the things that really come to the forefront in these open-ended responses are transparency, honesty, visibility, and accessibility from our resident responses in particular. And then there's a lot of emphasis on listening, on collaborating, on communicating the process that goes into various decisions. So there's a lot of desire for, again, some transparency and some collaboration from a potential candidate for superintendent. Some of the things that we pulled out here from residents in particular, residents would like to see the superintendent be an active part of the community, be honest and have a healthy respect for the students and their parents. They would like to see an advocate for each child in the district, someone who is not caught up in the political craziness we see at various levels, and someone who will look for input from the community members and seek to find the best solution for everyone. So again, an advocate, a voice for the community, and someone who is willing to be honest and listen to the community's concerns are some of the things that really rise to the surface when we look at resident responses. Among our staff respondents, some of the things that we see are, again, a focus on listening, on collaboration, willingness to be seen by the community, whether that's in events or being more active on district social media channels, community meetings, and then someone who knows the community and can build bridges with the community, build that trust between the district and the community members is something that would be appealing to our staff members. We presented our respondents with some ways the superintendent or the district as a whole might interact with the community and asked them to, again, evaluate how important each of these are and then which are the most important overall. For this particular question, we allowed them to select the top 3 most important types of interactions or ways that the superintendent might interact with community members in regards to the community's voice or influence in the school district. Not a lot of variance at all when we look at the evaluations of how important each of these things are. So it's worth noting that transparency about district finances, transparency about the decision-making process, allowing community input on bonds and other funding decisions, opening school board meetings with opportunities for public comment, providing regular updates and communication from the district, clear communication channels between district residents and the superintendent, and providing opportunities for collaboration between the district and parents on district goals and priorities. All of these things are identified as very important by a majority of our respondents, and only 3 of them had any respondents at all who indicated that these were not at all important considerations to them in regards to how the superintendent will interact with the community. Again, we wanted to force a choice here to understand a little bit of prioritization or hierarchy to each of these very important attributes of interactions. And so the things that rise to the top when presented with that forced choice, you can see transparency about the district's decision-making process coming in with 37% of respondents indicating that that's one of the 3 most important things to them. Regular updates and communication from the district, 32% of respondents, so just shy of a third, indicate that that is one of the most important interaction types to them. And 30% of respondents say that transparency about district finances and budget allocation is one of the most important considerations for them in terms of superintendent and community interactions or district and community interactions. Again, though, we see some statistical ties here just right on the neck of those top 3 attributes or qualities. So open school board meetings with opportunities for public comment and collaboration with parents on district goals and priorities, statistically tied there, just neck and neck. And then another statistical tie between our other 2 descriptions here. So allowing community input on bonds and other funding decisions and providing clear communication channels for residents. Overall, it's difficult to paint a clear picture in terms of what really differentiates a good candidate or good interactions between the district and the community, and what is less important to those positive interactions or those desirable interactions that will allow the community to feel that they have a voice. Between our top and bottom vote getters for this top 3 question here, there's only 18 percentage point difference. All of these attributes or descriptions of interactions are highly important to our community members, both within the district staff and among residents. That said, there are some differences between the priorities of district staff and residents in regards to these interactions and level of influence with the district's decision-making process. You can see transparency about the decision-making process is significantly more important to our staff members than our residents. 44% of district staff say that that's one of the 3 most important attributes to them. 37% of district staff say that regular updates and communication from the district interacting with the community would be one of the most important ways to promote the voice or level of influence that the community has, whereas the community focuses a little bit more on, again, sort of the financial aspect of transparency. 37% say that transparency about finances and budget allocation is especially important to them. And a third of residents say that collaboration with parents on district goals and priorities is important to ensure that they have a voice in the district. Other than those major differences, the only one that stands out is the community input on bonds and other funding decisions. That's significantly less important to our staff respondents than it is to our community respondents. Probably for obvious reasons, but it's worth noting also that our Provo High School boundary residents are more likely to identify community input on bonds and other funding decisions as a high priority to them than are our Timpview boundary residents. And that concludes the overview of the real meat of the survey, the substance here. This is just a quick couple slides looking at the demographic composition of our community respondents. So again, those residents, not staff members. We have a skew towards female respondents, 57%, where that should be about 50-50. But otherwise, we're pretty reflective of the community as a whole. 90% of our respondents identify as white or Caucasian, 6% identify as Hispanic or Latino. We have a good mix of age ranges here. Provo is an exceptionally young city, so we have a lot of respondents who don't yet have children in the district school system, or who may not have children in the district school system if they're just here temporarily as students. But we also have just shy of a quarter of residents in that 25 to 34 age range, and 13% in the 35 to 44 age range, where some of those educational concerns for their potential students start to really become top of mind. And then just about even distribution among those older age groups here. Provo is also an exceptionally well-educated city on the whole. You can see just shy of half of our respondents have a college degree. And good distribution of income ranges. 3 out of 4 of our respondents are married. Just shy of half of our respondents don't currently have any kids at home. But among those who do, it's most common to have 2 or 3 students in the household, or 2 or 3 children in the household, excuse me. 87% of our respondents indicate that they have children or grandchildren in the school, or who have children under the age of 18 at home, have children enrolled in the district. So for those respondents who have children in their household, most of them are enrolled in the Provo school district system. And predominantly, we received responses from elementary school level parents, though we do have 46% of respondents who have children in high school and 39% with students enrolled in junior high. Most of our respondents are not current volunteers with the PTA or community councils. but 1 in 5 identify as being involved with the district in that way. And most of our resident respondents are not professionally affiliated with the district. 70% indicate no professional ties, 2% identify as district staff members, 5% indicate that a member of their household works for the district, and 1 in 4 respondents indicate that they are close or know someone who is a district employee. That is the gist of our survey results, all that we have to share with you today. What questions can I answer for you with that?
Okay, that was great, Perry. Thank you so much. All right, we'll open the questions from the board.
Can we get an email with this?
Yeah, are you able to share that presentation with us?
Yes, absolutely.
I think that would be great.
I know it's a lot to digest, so I'm happy to send the PDF of this along. And then if there are follow-up questions upon review, we can certainly address those as they arise as well.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much. As someone who's been trying to parse through all the raw data that you sent out, this is so helpful to see the insights you've taken away from it and the patterns that you've seen. Yeah, I appreciate the work you've done. Thank you.
Of course, glad to help.
I agree with that. I do have a question. The demographic that you shared at the end. I'm not totally up on what our city demographics are, but it seemed to not quite align with our different cultural groups. Can you explain how close the survey results were to like the white and Hispanic, the Black, to what our community reflects?
Yeah, so 89% of Provo residents are still white or Caucasian. Our Hispanic representation is a little bit lower than it should be. Frankly, we aim for about 13% of respondents who identify as Hispanic or Latino, and we did not quite get that response rate among that population. Our Black, Asian, Pacific Islander, and Native or Indigenous people populations are still quite small in Provo. So having relatively low response rates there, frankly, having it register at all in a sample of 400 respondents is unfortunately still a little bit of an accomplishment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? It is a lot to digest. We're all still thinking.
Yeah, no worries.
So if we have any further questions, we can just send you an email. Would that work? We can. Okay.
Yes, please. That's perfect.
Thanks. Sounds great.
Thank you.
This is great.
Yeah, thank you so very much.
Of course, our pleasure. And we will send a copy of this along and be on standby for any follow-ups.
Okay, great.
Sounds
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care, folks. Bye.
Okay. If there's nothing else, no other questions or anything, then we just need a motion to adjourn unless you have something.
I have one question, which is just, I just want to, as we're deciding how we use this next, like what are our next steps? I also think it's worth asking, like, how do we share this information with the community?
So I had talked with, was it you or Caleb, about putting the results out on the website? So we could do that. That's an option.
That what we'd want to do is just make sure we filter any of the responses that give specific detailed information to make sure that.
Right.
I think you need to share this presentation.
Yes, if it's just this, then we're good.
Yeah, that's what I.
Perfect. Put this on the website,
Yeah.
share this with social media, share it with the email. Like they were saying, email is what people wanted.
Yeah,
that
that
was
was interesting.
Yeah. And then I think as far as getting this information to Richard, do we want to send him a summary of that report? Do we want to send him that report, or what we send him the report and have him kind of take out what he thinks is?
I think he's gonna push back on that.
Yeah, I think he will
Send the
too.
whole report.
I would think in this summary, maybe, and then people could add their own, like what have we seen
Yeah.
come
Well,
out in that?
She kind of put, these are the top
Here's the
three and
top
these are the
yeah.
top three and that, so I think maybe.
If we
if
just
a
take out
couple
like
of
the
us
top, yeah.
Work, you know, how we worked on the brochure before,
Right.
a couple of us say, this is how we want it to reflect in the brochure.
Right.
and
How do we want to
maybe
word
add it
this to make sure we're communicating clearly?
Mhm.
This is a vision we have for our next
Right.
superintendent.
So this is a time sensitive one. We need to get this searched pretty quick. And I'm happy to make this an assignment for a couple, 2 to 3 people who maybe want to work on taking out the top things and summarizing it so we can send that to Richard.
Mhm.
So is anybody open to taking on the assignment?
What's
May I?
our schedule?
We need to, we're opening the position by the 27th and we need to have the brochure, we need to have this in the brochure
As
by
soon
the
as possible.
27th,
Right,
so
like
ASAP.
tomorrow.
So like, yeah, like yesterday.
I can do it.
I can do it, yeah,
Okay, so Meg and Lisa, and I'm happy to take a look at it too.
Everyone can take.
I have one question about this. So we have this information, but we also have all the input from like our
Yeah.
meetings. How are we gonna incorporate that just so those people who shared there
Mhm,
also feel like, you know, we
Absolutely.
are taking
So-
that, and or maybe we can, I don't know how to look at that, and we can see if it just kind of trends to what this scientific data kind of tells us.
So we have a little work to do.
So my recommendation would be is to use the scientific data for the brochure, because that has your filtered summaried highlights of with the statistical sampling. And we're on a time constraint.
Sure.
Now, the overall picture of everything in the summary plus the district survey, we can take all of that and then go through and essentially talk about processes that we want to essentially either implement, change, improve, whatever, for the overall, every last area on here, which will include essentially all of that community input that wasn't part of the scientific and staff.
A lot
input.
of it like that.
I was
And a
just
lot
gonna
of it's
say,
gonna like,
Yeah,
I
so
just
reviewed
wanna make
all of
sure
them
we-
and they all line up pretty well. So I feel like pretty confident in using the data from this for the brochure.
For the
I feel like
brochure, and I think the other data is where, for me, it comes into play is, first of all, as we're looking to hire a candidate, I'd love it if we would say, you know, here's kind of based on all of this input, here's the lens we're gonna be looking at our
Mhm.
candidates through in terms of priorities,
Mhm.
you know? And that can inform us, and we're all gonna have our own unique things that for us will resonate the most, and that's great. But I think it would just be helpful to get that other information in there and use it. That's where I would like to use it the most, is to be able to
Absolutely.
know, like,
Well,
Right,
and
in
I
the
feel like
interviewing
it can be
process.
really instrumental in forming our interview questions
yes.
as well.
Yes.
I'm also wondering, we've talked a lot about the brochure,
Mhm.
but what about the actual application that they
Application.
fill out? I'm sure there's some specific questions. They need to write a little essay or do a little video. Can we
So-
use some of this to inform what that?
so the application that we have internally that we make every applicant fill out. We're asking, we do not have them fill that out. Okay, we just use the standard template form that Richard Stoll's group is, which is, you know, these are the documents that we want you to submit, which is gonna be your cover letter, your CV, or resume, you know, your educational, you know, beliefs and background, because what happens is the second these people enter in information into our system, there's enough people in our organization that can see all the information that's put in there. But if you have people internally applying and externally,
Right.
right, it can cause issues. So my recommendation is that we do not use that internal application form,
Mhm.
that we just use the standard form that Richard's got.
Okay, but does that have some customized questions?
Yes.
Because just looking at a resume is not gonna
Yes,
help us
correct.
narrow it
So
down to.
those questions that we want them to include in their packet for their superintendent
Yeah.
packet, we will definitely need all of that nailed down
Before the 27th.
before the
Yeah.
flyer goes out.
Right,
Because
so
that,
as we're typing the brochure, we need to come up with
I think
questions
it's
related to
important.
them.
bingo, yes.
Okay. As soon as we're done, I'll get on the phone with Richard.
Okay.
And I'll ask him for all of those things, and then we're gonna, what I'll probably try to do is get on that superintendent search Google space and start doling out assignments. So we're gonna need to look at the application process that Richard has and make any kind of tweaks or suggestions on questions or anything we want in there. We're gonna need to have some people reviewing the data from this report and getting that to him for the brochure. We are gonna need to continue looking at, well, there's time sensitive ones I'll type on first, but we also do need to start looking at also the stuff that's due for this, the citizens committee, which
Yes.
is
Yeah.
due pretty quick here as well.
That'd be Friday.
So Friday for all of our names, And then, after that, we need to get, by March 1st, we need to have the letter out to the people finalized and the confidentiality agreement finalized, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole bunch of stuff we need to go over there too. So everybody get ready
Here we go.
to do some work, and I'll just try and start putting it on today.
And if we have ideas, like what Jennifer's saying around, what should the application packet look like? And I know we, want to hear what is traditional and what's expected in the field.
Mhm.
But then if we have any input on that, we can just put it on the.
Absolutely, yeah.
What I'll do too is, because there's that standard list of things that typically they have submitted as part of that packet. I'll create that list of, this is right now that standard list. Boom, 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 boom. What is it that we want to essentially scrap or add or adjust or whatever? So I'll add that to the space too.
Also, did we decide if we want CV or resume? I can tell you that Richard recommended a resume. He said CVs can be like 30, 35 pages long, depending on the person's experience. And for the most part, resumes sometimes are 2 or 3 pages long, but still give a good overview of what we're looking for. So he recommended a resume, especially as we're having citizens look at it. They're going to be looking at a lot of stuff. So it maybe kind of summarizes a little bit easier for them, but that's his recommendation. But I know you really wanted a CV.
Yeah.
Anybody else have an
Yeah,
opinion?
Terry, just will you explain your preference? Why is CV in your opinion?
Because it will have all of their educational experience. I want it all. I want to know, when's the very first time you were a teacher to your current job?
And
How
you
many
think it
years is
wouldn't
that?
be
And
on
how
a
many jobs
resume?
is that?
Is that not on a resume?
No.
I guess not
be.
necessarily.
You put you like your last.
CVs include awards and
Whatever,
certificates.
maybe in a research paper.
Yeah,
Right.
okay. I mean, I Googled when to use a CV or a resume. And the Google said that CVs are more traditional in an educational setting.
Yeah.
And I went to Dave, who hires lots of CEOs, and he said he's like, I don't think it actually matters, but if someone feels strong, he's like, he doesn't have a bias. So because I don't have a ton of experience with that, I'm fine with taking the CV and looking it over. I don't know that it will really be fair.
It could be.
It could absolutely be. CVs can get really, really long.
That seems overwhelming to me.
If they're
and
bragging enough, it will be fair.
Can we put a
I
page
think we're
limit?
looking at a package that includes their experience with so many other things that I don't know that I want them to spend the time to create something that's could be that long when I want them to spend as much time on answering some of the other questions.
Has any other districts asked for CVs as far as Richard's concerned?
He said most people ask for resumes.
What else is in the application packet then, just so I get it correct? Because I
That's
would
what I
like a
don't know.
CV unless that information is
not
already
brochure.
coming in a different thing.
Right,
Yeah,
can we
right on that.
specify we
Yeah.
want all the
Yeah.
information in a resume? Like if that's what,
Or we could limit it to 10 pages.
so they
It's kind of the same thing, the resume with this information or a CV that's limited to 10 pages, you might end up with the same.
Yeah, well, I'll just see if I can find.
You can always do an or,
You could do CV or.
CV or resume.
Yeah.
and
But make sure that it includes,
A
so
hard stop.
CV or resume
but must
that
include.
includes.
And it has a limit of this many pages or something like that.
I'm fine with that. We can let them choose.
But then you want specifically
I
that
want-
includes,
Their whole educational career on it. I want to know everything.
No. I do have this one.
Well,
It says in there.
Here it is.
Oh.
we got it.
Where was it? Additional requirements or?
And we need to have a tab on the website about this.
A formal letter indicating your desire to be considered. Application completed in full, and it says Pro City School District, so that's when you were talking about.
So we
How we're
don't
gonna
want
adjust
that.
that.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
We're just whichever we say is the application, right? A complete set of transcripts, 3 professional letters of recommendation, current resume, including accomplishments as administrator, a statement of your educational philosophy, how you've successfully used data in the past, and the focus you will have is select.
Maybe
Yeah, so that doesn't include any other, like, doesn't
Your
doesn't
complete
Those are
specify
separate.
your.
I do think if Megan and I are gonna look at this report, which hopefully will get emailed to us.
Right, like.
Quickly, for how it can impact the brochure, one thing it might do is we might say, how would we see this about a person? What should we be sure to include in this packet that would maybe help us see this about a person? Does that make
Yes,
sense?
mhm,
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe we can give that input a little bit too, and you guys could respond to that.
I'm fine with that.
You could even have one of the questions or one of the things say, submit a one-page letter. Essentially stating how you have shown that you are a person of good character, that you're gonna place the priorities of, teachers and collaborate and communicate with, the public or whatever. Right, you could easily
What would
just
you-
say,
And that could come later in an interview
Yeah.
process too, like, be like not getting into the weeds in the application itself.
When
Yeah.
it gets down to our
We're gonna
final.
screen down, for sure, we're gonna
Yeah,
make
That's what I was
sure.
gonna ask. By the time it gets to us, if Terry or anyone else feels like that we don't have enough information on the education, could we ask them for that information? Like,
Absolutely.
I'm sure we could, yeah.
Information?
Yeah.
Does that work or
Okay.
no?
Yeah. The top candidates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just top candidates, not just, but if any of them didn't include that.
that's true. You
And
can obviously
that was
filter
better
down and say,
for-
okay, these are the top candidates that we're considering in the
Give us a
additional
little more
education.
info, yeah. So, okay, so we've decided on an or for the CV versus the resume, right? Do we feel comfortable with that, or or do we really want the CV? We'll do the or. Okay, so we'll do the or, a resume or a CV, and then I just forwarded the final presentation to everyone, so everybody has it now. So we can get working on all those other things, and I'll start making lists in the superintendent search area, or in the Google space, thank you, area, space, whatever. And we'll get to work, so, okay? Great. Awesome, all right, now, anyone else have anything before we adjourn? Okay, anybody want to, a motion?
Maybe adjourn this